Call the facilities meeting to order. We're going to start with buildings and grounds and ask for a motion to approve the minutes of last month's meeting. We have Supervisor Montesi, seconded by Matt. Call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Is there anything from the public, any questions from the public before we start? Okay, hearing none, go ahead, Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under the first action item, I have a request to create a new position, a cleaner, and this is replacing a laborer who is retiring. I believe that's the last laborer position we have on nights. Cleaner is actually a little more, what do I want to say?
It's a more appropriate title.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made, seconded by Matt. Discussion. Hearing none, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
And the second resolution is to backfill a cleaning position vacated by a resignation. And
Make that motion.
Okay, we need a second by Ron. Discussion. Hearing none, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Under information and discussion items, the court project, the steel was delivered starting this morning. They'll be setting it. We have some photos here we can pass around.
Right now, I see.
Yeah. Their anticipation is to have the steel up and the envelope on by the end of May, which is pretty aggressive, but that's their intent anyway. And then all the other trades can get inside and.
Schedule-wise, they like where they're at?
Schedule-wise, they're actually a little bit ahead of schedule, I think.
I thought you said, yeah.
Are there any questions on the renovation?
Anybody have any questions on the renovation, the court renovations?
I go with and
Frank?
Kevin is there too. So it's every Tuesday at 1 o'clock we have a update with the contractors.
Okay, and everything's been smooth?
Yeah, and, the price changes or change orders have balanced out, so none of them have cost us any more.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead, Frank.
The arraignment area, it's just basically nothing has changed since last we reported. We're waiting on the New York State courts to approve the project and decide how they want it arranged, I guess, but we're ready to go, wherever they are.
Yeah, it's in the wrong room.
And Murph Building, Jeff, do you have?
Jeff, you have the update on the Murph building?
Yeah, Clark Patterson did complete their report and a design of some repairs to the Murph building. You'll remember that there were concerns that the Murph building did not meet the importance factor necessary for storing emergency equipment. So that has been a process that has been ongoing since we initiated that study. It did lead to Clark Patterson determining that the building would meet the importance factor with some additional structural connections to prevent lateral, really the problem was lateral loads largely, and also some damage to some of the steel columns from trucks coming into the high bays where they dump materials. So they had worked through that design. We estimated the repairs at approximately $26,000 to conduct those repairs that would strengthen the building to the point where it would meet the importance factor 4, and then we could move ahead with modifying one end of the building to store OES equipment.
Okay, what is the committee's pleasure on that? We haven't had a commitment from Brian, I would say, that he wants to store it there. Do you want to send it back to public safety and see if we do those expenditures and bring it up to the standards, he would be interested in storing his equipment there? Ron?
My question is, would he be interested in storing the equipment? Who's making the decision, us or him? Because, I mean, we told him we're not going to build a new building. This is an alternative. I know he's been concerned about the trailers being out and exposed to the elements. And this was one solution where, you know, it seemed like a good idea. You know, if you want to run it back for safety, fine, but I mean, I think it's a decision that we have to make. It's either going to stay outside or we're not going to build a new building, so this is a good alternative.
Okay, anyone else want to chime in? Go ahead.
Just to recap some of this evolving story here, we were looking into this, what's called the Murph Building. What does that stand for?
Municipal something recycling facility.
Facility, okay. And it was going to be the cheap alternative, right? Was that the first thought, that here's an existing building, has garage doors, we should just be able to back things in and store them? Is that how it's going?
Yeah, the building is being rented, 50% of the building is being rented by a recycling company. So there is space there. So that's, initially the request was to identify existing buildings where we had capacity to store the equipment. So that's what initially led to the review of the various storage that is under Frank's control and this committee's control, and then we've identified that as having the adequate access and door heights and other things to be able to store that type of equipment. And then in the process of proceeding with a code review to add in some fencing to segregate part of the building and add some exterior egress. Codes had identified, or a concern was brought to codes regarding that importance factor, and that's what led to the study and kind of delayed implementation of that plan.
What are you looking for, Chairman? Where?
Well, I'll do the best I can. They're backing up even further. There was some audit review going on that saw the trailers outside, so they shouldn't be there, which led to Brian asking for a pole barn type structure with a roof over it, and and we didn't have the funding. It was offered up that this building's in existence. It's ready to back in items and keep them out of the weather.
Great.
And then we ran into some loggerheads as far as discussion on it, and one of the things came up to Jeff was that it didn't meet the standards of a building that would be storing that type of equipment, in so much as it has to be better built, I guess. So Jeff solicited Clark Patterson's help, and they looked at the building and said the modifications needed come to $26,000. That's where we're at today. And then there would be, I think, some other things. I believe we are going to fence off some area for security. There was lighting issues and possibly a man door that would have to be installed. So there's some other expenses, and then a turning radius to make sure that that was all right to get the stuff out, but those were other issues. Personally, it never came across to me that Brian was interested in that site or facility, which leads to Mr. Montesi's comment that
So the resolution, would say that we support spending the $26,000 to upgrade the building if the safety committee and Office of Emergency Services also agree that it's suitable to them and they will use it going forward.
yeah, I think the proper thing to do is send it back to the safety committee to say we have a building that's capable of, I think Brian did have some arguments as far as parking issues, etc., of housing the units as opposed to keeping them outside, which was the point of contention. If they want to debate it and don't want to, we shouldn't spend the money going forward, but that, I think, should be a committee discussion with Brian, and then, you know, if they're all for it and want to do it, then we execute the process. Jeff?
Mr. Chairman, I'm chairman of that committee, and I'm bring it. We'll address it next month.
Is that acceptable to you?
Yeah.
Did you have something?
Well, yeah, I mean, those trailers haven't moved at all, so I think it's the right thing to do if we can get it done for this amount of money, I think we just say we're gonna move them there. If they need to be in and out of the weather, I don't believe those trailers have gone anywhere in a long time. I don't think they get moved around much. If it's suitable, we'll just move them down there.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll add is at the time when the board had initially directed us to improve the building so those could go in there, before this study began, the board had authorized $16,000 in expenditure that included a fence to divide some of the floor space, some exterior doors, and some interior lighting, and that was moved into Frank's operational budget. By the time we knew the codes wasn't going to approve the plan until the study was done, we didn't have time to move that out into something durable. So that money, those $16,000 were returned to the general fund. So what we have now is the additional expense of this $26,000, but we still have that $16,000 in expenses that went back to the general fund. So in total, we would be spending $42,000 to get it done at this point. The $16,000 that the board already authorized, it wasn't expended because codes didn't approve of the plan without the study, and then the new improvements to the building structure.
I think the $16,000 included the cage fencing that would segregate the leasee from us.
Yep.
And then I think there was a new garage door, one of the doors was something.
We were adding man doors for egress, so it was the fencing through the building, man doors for egress, and then additional lighting, which would be flood lamp type lighting along the walls, and some other electrical work to be able to give some more receptacle outlets for plugging in the trailers that need to be heated or have internal heating systems or whatever.
Yeah.
So this $26,000 does not include the lighting, it doesn't include the fencing,
Right.
it doesn't include the door.
Right. That was the $16,000 that was prior authorized by the board that was not expended.
So then we're looking at $42,000 to upgrade this facility.
Yes.
And we've already spent with Clark Patterson Lee, how much?
$10,000, and that was spent out of budgeted code that's already spent.
So that's $56,000 to, if we were to go forward.
It'd be an additional $42,000.
I can't
Additional
remember what
42,
the
but
concept
42.
was in terms of cost for a pole barn that would house this, but I think it was in excess of $100,000.
Yes, it was significant. You remember the numbers?
They're kind of irrelevant because those pole barns didn't meet the same standard that we're meeting with these structural improvements to this building. So the original estimate that Clark Patterson did was an $800,000 building.
Okay, so it's, you want to put a motion to send it back to Public Safety? John, seconded by Craig. Any other discussion?
You don't need to bring it back, he'll move his stuff down there.
Even better.
Just don't need it.
Okay, so do we want to authorize the $42,000 expenditure?
That's
And put a motion on the floor for that?
From contingency or from
Well,
balance?
that would go to finance to find the money for us. Okay, so it would be a $42,000 total, send it on to finance for the money. We have a motion by John, seconded by Ron. Any other discussion?
And there's no other option B at this point on that, now that we have these numbers.
That would be as inexpensive.
Okay. Call the question, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Mr. Chairman, one other small point. I've been working with Frank on utilizing some space in the old jail, the kitchen area. Frank and his crew will be fixing that over, putting some sheetrock up, some carpeting in, a door, and we're going to be moving Joy down there, and that'll give her more than enough space. She's in pretty tight quarters now, and utilizing that space. We just have to wait until the court trial is over for the West trial, because the guards are utilizing that space right now, and they really didn't want to move while the trial was going on.
Okay.
We will have Frank and we think we can get that all done by the end of May.
Oh, great. Anything else, from the supervisors, anything else come before Committee for Buildings and Grounds?
I'd been asked to review some of the vacant positions, and because a bunch of them are in facilities, lots of times I'll discuss those in the DPW committee, but if the facilities committee would like to see the vacancies related to buildings and grounds and airport, I can kind of run through some of the vacant positions and some of the approvals that are pending and how those approvals go through the board for backfills. That's okay.
Do you have any handouts? Because I can't read that.
I don't have that printed. What I wanted to talk through, at least show a baseline, is this is the structure of buildings and grounds. You have Frank here, superintendent of buildings, and he has an administrative assistant. This is the day crew here, and you'll see these numbers here in parentheses. That is the grade of the position and the title, and then the personnel that are filling that position. So we have 11 personnel on during days, and then over here on the right-hand side, you'll see this is our night crew of cleaners. We have a variety of positions from grade 16, 13, 10, 10, 8, and 6, of varying degrees of job titles and expertise or skill set. Obviously, the higher the grade, the higher the skill set. Any questions just on how this is structured? Even over in our night crew, we have our senior custodian. She runs the crew. We have a janitor who's really her number 2 person, and then cleaners and laborers. As we mentioned, we're eliminating this labor position, so we're just going to use the cleaner title going forward. Where this relates to some of the ongoing discussions regarding positions is in how we, well, here's another summary of just overall department full-time positions. I know there's been some discussions about the decrease in certain divisions. Here's our buildings and grounds days crew. Back in 2006 we had 14, we're down to 11 now. Night crew, we had 16, we're down to 8 now. Airport, we had 7 full-time employees, we're down to 4 now. And that just shows kind of how things have evolved since from 2006 to 2017. Overall, the department has gone from 136 full-time positions to 107 during that same time period. Really started in 2007 with cuts to full-time positions. Any questions there?
Are you going to email this out to everybody as well?
I
If that's
can.
a document, I definitely want to take a look at.
Okay. One of the summaries that I put together, this is where it gets a little confusing, so hopefully that helps in understanding the structure. So here's a summary of all the vacancies within the department, and I want to go kind of through different categories of personnel. This upper portion of the table is all the current full-time vacancies in the department. So I have 107 positions, and currently I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 vacancies that I'm trying to fill. One of the positions that I was asked to get some committee consensus on is actually a Parks and Recs position, but it impacts buildings and grounds because I promoted a buildings and grounds grade 10 building mechanic or carpenter into a grade 13 position. This was a position that I created newly through the budget, and we've got county policies in place that if you create a new position as part of the budget, you have authority to fill it within the first 6 months of the year without doing the intent to backfill. So there's some questions as to whether an intent to backfill was required, and I was asked to bring these positions back for committee review. I'll be talking this one in Public Works again. Where it impacts facilities is this position right here, this carpenter maintenance worker position, is where this individual came from. So I've already promoted this individual. He's already moved on, and then I found out that I needed additional committee approval. We have a current vacancy right now in buildings and grounds because this position, this promotion hasn't officially been recognized. I haven't had authority to bring this position that was vacated through committee, and So I'm hoping that by the end of the day, I can get a nod on this position that yes, this was filled properly, and then I can get an committee approval on an intent to backfill this grade 10 position. And then the other thing that we do on the intent to backfill is, you'll see on the form, there's a checkbox for promotions due to, or filling vacancies due to promotion. And that goes to the different tiers and structure of the department, and how one vacancy can generate multiple promotions before we actually get to a point where we're hiring somebody new. For instance, in this case, that that full-time, that grade 10 position is right here, this carpenter maintenance worker. So I have grade 8s that would likely put in, grade 6s, and then this is the type of position that I have other people within the department, if they're below grade 10, they may qualify based on prior experience or private sector experience. So what ends up happening is, potentially, okay, I've got a vacancy here, so Frank's day crew is short manpower right now because of that one vacancy. A promotion occurs, let's say it's a grade 8 into that position. The initial intent to backfill, I have to go through committee, that could take a month. Then I have to post it for 15 days. Then I have to conduct interviews, and then a promotion board, and make a final decision on who's I'm promoting. So the process can take anywhere from 5 to 8 weeks for the initial one. In the past, we used to request board authorizations through every resolution to backfill vacancies due to promotions, so that we could immediately post the next position that was vacated and not wait to go back through a full another board cycle. In 2014, the board adopted a policy that allows, on the intent to backfill form, approval to fill vacancies created by promotions to fill that one vacancy. So what it did was it streamlined the process, and it made it much faster to fill a vacancy, fill the vacancy behind it, and whoever was promoted, and it basically trickles down to the point where finally we're hiring somebody new and actually adding the manpower back into the division. So that's been the policy up until now, and if the committee wants us to go back to a point where we're getting intent to backfill on every position, my only concern is it does create a perpetual manpower shortage, because by going back to committee every time, it'll take 4 to 6 weeks each cycle, depending on when the vacancy occurs and when the next committee meeting is.
Rachel, you have a question?
I do. Jeff, we spoke a little bit about this issue this morning with the sheriff's office as it related to a position they needed to fill as well. And I know it's pending on the personnel agenda. Jackie was working on that to clear up that language. It was my understanding, and perhaps Kevin or Ron or even Matt Fogle could clarify a little bit more, because I know they were all at the same meeting I was at regarding these positions. But I think what they really wanted to do was be able to identify an employee's name, just not the employee number, and then also it's really becoming a problem with personnel and civil service in terms of not being able to just check that box and have all the other backfills happen. So I don't know if the intent, and we can clarify that on Thursday, for it always to come through committee, or if it's just that the proper paperwork needs to be done ahead of time. And perhaps, Kevin, you can shed light on that.
It's my understanding that in certain positions, we wanted the committee to vet every fill. But if you're going to do a promotion, you can also streamline the process by putting all the backfill that you're going to do. Now, and you may not know who you're putting in there, but I don't understand. I guess you've lost me, because if you had a grade 10 leave, you could promote, you can fill the grade 10, and then you fill the bottom jobs. You can do that all in one fell swoop, but it just has to come through committee. It doesn't have to be wait 30 days and bring it back again. I mean, they do that in a lot of areas where they're going to fill a certain position, and then we're going to backfill the following positions, but it's done through committee. It's brought to committee.
Right, and so, like, if you go back to the agenda, on the back of the agenda is the intent to backfill form. And that intent to backfill form includes on it the committee authorization to backfill due to promotions. So if you look at the upper right-hand corner, a couple lines below my signature, request a backfill due to promotion. So that's since May of 2014. This is the form that the board had adopted. Once we got to a point where the board resolution, no longer were every backfill going for full board resolution. I remember Paul Dusick talking about the fact that we've got multiple controls in place, multiple approvals required, and rather than go for a board resolution every time, it really ends at the committee level now. As a result, this form was modified to include that language, so that since May of 2014, what we've always done is we check that box, request authorization to backfill due to promotions, and then this 426 follows every one of those promotions down through the channels to the point where we hire a new person. It's the same intent to backfill attached to the 426s. So one of the things we talked about with when this first started coming up, at least from what Supervisor Seaver's concern is we can put a chart together that shows the train right through of all of the positions, so that it follows this one form. That's easy enough to do, and that's kind of what we explain when we send those down, that this is the backfill for the person who backfilled that grade 10. And so if it's as simple as just explaining which of those positions are all kind of linked together, and the linkages of the various levels and the personnel that were promoted, that's fine. I know the Sheriff's Department, from my understanding, is in a little bit different situation in that they have a clear structure where when they're promoting, they're almost always promoting in a direct line up through their channels. Our titles are such that people even at much lower grades can still qualify and interview for the higher grades. So like this grade 10 position, I don't know who's going to be promoted into that until I first post it, find out who's interested, conduct interviews, review experience. It's not always a grade 8 going to a grade 10 and then a grade 6 going to a grade 8. There are times where a grade 6 may qualify and be the preferred candidate for a grade 10 position. So that's what makes it difficult, in that I can't really lay out all the promotions all at once and all the positions all at once. The way we've been doing it since May of 2014 at least shortens the timeline. So the minute I make a promotion, I immediately post the vacated position for 15 days and then immediately do interviews. So I can do a 20-day turnaround versus a 60, or 45 or 60-day.
But I think, Jeff, all we're asking is you bring it to committee. You bring it to committee, the posting of the position, the initial, whether it be promotion, and then your trail of backfills. That's all. Just bring it, just the way they do it at Sheriff's Department. They promote, and then they say, we're going to backfill the various positions. And I've never seen an issue over there. The issue is always with DPW, and what you need to do is you're going to promote a grade 10, list a grade 10. If you're going to backfill from 6 or 8s and you don't know, just say you're going to backfill whatever goes on. Because initially, when you create that position, somebody's going to go in there, correct?
No.
So you never know.
Until I have to get this approved. The intent to backfill happens first. Then I post the position for 15 days. I get a list of names of who's interested. Then I conduct interviews. Then I pull a promotion board together where I sit down with the division head and the other leaders in the division and discuss the candidates, get input from those individuals. Then I make a selection. The minute I promote somebody to that grade 10, whoever I promoted, I turn around and post the position they vacated.
Yeah, but I
don't know until
that's
that.
Complicating the thing. If you have a vacancy, you bring it to committee. You have a vacancy you want to fill, and then you put on there you want to backfill. But you bring it to committee. You let the committee know.
Right, and that's what this form does.
Hold on. Bring it to committee, and then you backfill those positions through committee, just like every other department does it the same way. They get the intent to backfill. I mean,
So
is that not the way we're doing it now?
the way I've been doing it in accordance with the board policy is correctly with this form. So this form
Not with the
goes
form.
to committee.
I don't care about the form. I'm talking about committee. You bring that form to committee so committee knows that you're going to backfill positions in DPW. There was a directive, there was a concern about filling certain positions in DPW that the chairman asked us to look at. if you complete that form, don't complicate it. This is not complicated. If you have a promotion, then you're going to backfill within the department. As long as it goes through committee, I have no problem with it. It's when you try to not go through committee and get permission to backfill the positions that I have an issue with.
So this form always goes through committee. That's the final signature on it, is the committee
And it's
chairman.
written up that way that you're going to backfill all
It says it right here. That's
Hold
what
on.
the form...
I'm not asking about the form. Not everybody in that table does not read that form. The committee members do not read that form. There's only like 3 or 4 of us that read the form. What I'm saying is, write it up in your agenda for the committee and bring it through the committee.
So I can certainly explain this line in
Not
the
what
form.
I'm asking. I said, write it up so it's in your packet, so
Okay.
it's on your agenda. So everybody
I can
read
do my
it.
best with it, but I don't know where those positions will come from, where people will be promoted. The other thing that happens is there's laterals. So there may be laterals across divisions, where I have a building maintenance mechanic in another division that maybe it's not a promotion, but they want to move to they want to move into a separate division. It happens between buildings and grounds and parks and recs at times.
So what would your answer be? What would your solution be?
What has been occurring up until recently, since May of 2014, is we use this one form to get the initial intent to backfill approved, and then any vacancies that are in that same chain. And the reason that was implemented was because what was happening was every step of the way there was a 1 month to month and a half delay to go back to committee. As long as I can do it in one committee meeting with this form, and I can answer any questions and explain it all, and have that accepted down at Personnel and Civil Service, that's fine. That's the way it's been since May of 2014.
So what you're saying is you want to tell us you're going to backfill a position, and then the backfills beyond that, you just want to fill them.
Any vacancies due to promotions, right?
Ron?
Yeah, no, 426, we're requiring 426s on every position. What used to happen is you file a 426 and you check a box called backfill, and that's all you did. So all the administrator or any of us knew was you're filling one position and then you were backfilling. What you were backfilling, who you were backfilling with, et cetera, was not represented on that form. So right now, we're going to require 426s on everything. That's number one. Number two, in terms of your department, because we have matters dealing with other divisions within the Department of Public Works, we want to, for example, make sure to the county administrator that we don't foreclose some possibilities that might exist at that level. So the idea that, so therefore we wanted everything to be reported back to the committee, not to go to the full board, but at least come back to committee. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, no, it's not reverting back to 2014. I'm not sure what you're pitching today, but that's not going to happen. I can guarantee you that. And what is required, however, is that you be a good communicator with the county administrator, and so that when something's happening and I get a phone call, I can call the county administrator and I can get a quick answer to my question. And so, for example, right here, for example, we're going to fill this position. Okay, we're going to fill that position. Should we later in the year make some modifications to our organizational structure at the airport? Do we have a building maintenance person at the airport that we're going to have to deal with at some point down the road? And if we're going to have to deal with it down the road, do we deal with it here? If not, okay, where are we going to deal with it and how? And these are the questions that I'm posing to the county administrator, and that's why the county administrator requires what he requires. And that's just one little example. Now, there can be many examples. What's required here is that the department has to be a good communicator with the administrator. When it comes to the committee in a timely fashion, these things will be approved, I'm sure, as a matter of fact. However, they're going to be measured against what we may be looking to accomplish in terms of a bigger situation. So I'm not looking for a debate here. Frankly, no debate is even needed, or is it even going to be accepted by me. 426 is a being required every position, and no matter what department it is to be a good communicator with the county administrator. And that's the end of it. That's the end of the discussion. On that point, now, if we can help you do this efficiently, we're more than helpful in that regard. If we can help facilitate through personnel, we're happy to do that as well. We're happy to facilitate the best that we are able. But we need to pause on our end, and we need to be able to think in these terms. And that's just one little example. There may be other examples going forward. So,
Yeah, just like
not
we...
the only departments filing 426s on every position.
It's like we told social services this morning. If you run into a problem where you need to fill a mandated position in countryside or something, you don't need to wait 30 days. We'll convene a meeting. But the committee needs to approve it. Same with this. If you have a vacancy, there's no reason why you can't bring that vacancy to this committee and have the committee give you permission to fill the vacancy and backfill any of those positions. You already have authority to do that. It'll already be on record in the minutes. And that's all I'm looking for is this committee to know the potential of what you're going to fill and what positions you're going to fill.
Is that clear?
I'm not going to debate it either. I'm done debating it.
I just don't want people to be confused. We are doing 426s on every position. The question is really the intent to backfill that goes to the committee. The 426 is the end product, and we attach to that either a board resolution or the intent to backfill that gives the authority to fill the position. But 426s go forward on every single position always. That's how their pay grades change. That's how their position title changes. So I'm happy to discuss those further as we bring those intent to backfills and discuss, the larger impacts and get
Rachel?
committee consensus.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just ask that we move this discussion to Thursday when we'll be looking at this in terms of changing the form at personnel. There has been a lot of time spent on it previously, and the policy is a policy. So moving forward, we'll discuss this on Thursday, not specifically as it relates just to Jeff's department, but to all departments as a whole.
Okay.
If that's
thanks.
acceptable.
All right. Does anyone privilege of the floor? Anyone have privilege of the floor? Okay, we'll move on to the airport. Thanks, Frank. Any questions before we open up the airport meeting from anyone? Okay, go ahead, Ross.
Okay, thank you. First item is a transfer funds request, resolution request. To move some airport salary money into the DPW highway labor fund. Jeff, do you want to touch on that a little bit, or it's pretty straightforward? It's cover DPW highway labor to assist at the airport, covering some of our labor shortages at the moment.
We have a person who resigned from the airport early this summer. Works at the city of Glens Falls now, and rather than fill the position, exactly because of some of the comments that were made regarding the future of the airport, we opted to try and manage it with the position vacant, and we've been assigning highway personnel down there. I need to recoup that money back into the highway fund, however, because it is not highway work that they're doing.
Motion to get it on the floor. Ron, second. By Claudia. Discussion?
Isn't that standard practice?
There's been highway personnel assisting the airport for years, yes.
Right. And don't you back charge that?
Yes.
Okay. What's this do?
This is actually moving money so that Ross has a code to pay it out of. Or is this the actual invoice or voucher? No, this is the transfer that would cover the voucher. So in other words,
Is
Ross
this
is...
just an interdepartment transfer?
No, it's a salary code transfer. We don't have authority to do that without a board resolution. So Ross is saving money in his salary codes. He has to pay it out of a contract code. I need board authorization to move money from salaries into a contract code. That's what this is for.
Rachel?
My only question was, it looks like because it was regarding snow removal, that this is obviously the work's already taken place, so we're going, is that correct?
Yes.
So, is that common practice that comes after the fact versus beforehand, because you didn't know you have to have that need for the money?
We immediately assigned the person down there, yes, because the immediate need with the person vacating the position, and then we knew we'd have to do this transfer, of course. We track it by hour through our contract system, so we have an exact accounting in the end of what is going to get back charged. And that's what that voucher is, that's in the pages afterwards. Yes.
Any other questions?
Chairman, Treasurer, you're good with that?
Well, this is the first I've seen it, but, I mean, yeah, as long as it's January of 17 forward, we're okay.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Okay, before we jump and go down the list of referral and pending items for discussion, something that's not on the agenda I want to bring up, we have not brought forward yet the Balloon Festival contract. I did get a call from Bill Ray from the RV Club. He was asking me some questions about the field being available. Did the committee want to approve the Balloon Festival agreement for this year, or do you want to wait till next month and put it on the agenda?
What?
Same as last year, no anticipated changes to the Balloon Festival agreement. I assume everybody wants it to move forward as is.
Yeah, no, just get it in our packet so we have it, and we'll do it
In the
next
packet
month.
for next month? Okay.
And I also
Very
thought
good.
we had a plan to slowly start increasing those fees. But didn't we discuss that last year?
We just, not to increase, we
For
just,
the
we
RVs? I thought
just
we
charged
had-
them last year.
Right, but I thought...
Want to
we had a
increase it
plan
already?
Did we have a discussion about it?
Yeah, but not, I don't think on the increase. We had a discussion about charging them. I think you were against charging them. And,
Sounds like I would be against.
yeah. And, but we did get an amount from them, I think it was about $1,000 we were talking about,
Okay.
from the RV users, that they've been there for years.
Oh, your memory's better than mine, that's fine. I don't remember.
You'll have it in next month's meeting. I'm sorry? You'll have the packet. Yeah, we'll do that next month.
Okay, going down the referral pending items list, the first item is the spreadsheet for airport revenues and expenditures. I did provide something back to Chairman Gerard, Chairman Conover, back in December of 2015. It's quite some time ago. If you'd like, I can forward that information on to you again, but we were simply looking to have that referral item removed from the list. Again, that spreadsheet, that data has been provided previously. Are there any questions? Or
So, number
that's number
one
one.
has already been,
yeah, that spreadsheet had been provided quite some time ago. For whatever reason, it didn't get removed from the referral pending list. I'm looking for approval to take it off the list.
But we never got that list. That was for, wasn't the, or you're saying this goes back to 2015? This isn't the most recent request we had?
No, this has been on here for quite some time. You can see that, the last update was in October of 15, and then
Oh.
in December I had forwarded that information. This has just been carrying over for, seems like forever, and I'd simply like to remove that from the list.
Well, do you have an updated list of it that you can just send over?
I haven't updated that spreadsheet, no.
Will you
since-
resend that to me?
Yeah, I can send that list out.
Yeah, would you send it out to committee?
Sure.
Yeah. Maybe we should leave it on there until we see it. Is it easy to update? Should be, right?
Data, just a matter of data entry, I
Yeah.
believe. Yes.
Could we ask for it to be updated and just leave it on the agenda for next month and that way we can look at it? It's a couple of years old.
Of course.
That request goes back to when I served.
Yes.
A while back.
That request goes back
Yeah.
possibly 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, number 2 is a referral item here for the county attorney. It's regarding the proposed amendments to the FBO contract based upon changes made at the airport. Update on February of 28th, the county attorney to meet with a legal counsel for Rich Air to determine any appropriate adjustments to the FBO contract regarding the hours of operation for the restaurant. Brian, do you have anything you want to add at this time?
Go ahead, Brad.
I spoke to John Lapper, who represents Rich Air, and going to speak for John and not, hopefully I will characterize it correctly. We discussed the history of the issues between the cafe that was there and the restaurant, and there is a fairly detailed chronology of communications back and forth between Rich Ayers representatives and representatives of the county. And there are characterizations on both sides of what was understood was going to be happening and what may have not been understood was going to be happening. The bottom line from, I think from Rich Ayers' position is that they believe that the contract should be reflected to reflect the current status quo, which is that there is a restaurant there, there is not a cafe there, breakfast is not served, and they believe that that was fairly and prospectively introduced to the committees and to the board, and they would like to have the contract amended that way. Ross does not agree with that resolution. He is looking for a different resolution. He believes that the cafe breakfast issue should be resolved in a way that results in some service there available for breakfast, minimal or otherwise, and that the status quo should not simply be reflected in the lease agreement. John, is that a fair characterization of your position?
I would say yes on the first part. We just got the writing from Russ a couple of days ago. When we were here last time to discuss this issue, which I think was at the end of February, we provided numbers that for half a year, the revenues from Rich's new restaurant to the county was $25,000 versus $2,300 for the last year of operation for full year with the cafe. It was just a money loser. So what Rich has created is something that is popular and successful and good for the county budget. We don't want to go back to the cafe because the county was basically subsidizing that by paying the gas and the electricity and everything else, and it still wasn't making any money. So, I think we have a disagreement with Ross, but the discussions you and I had was spot on.
Okay. And Ross, do you think I've fairly characterized your position on that?
Yes, I do, yes.
So
I believe that the airport cafe provided services to the pilots, and without that breakfast and lunch service available to the pilot community, it's not really serving the local flying community that has been served at the airport for a very long time.
I believe that, having said all that, that's above my pay grade. I think that's a decision for the committee and ultimately the board.
Okay. Matt?
And Rich Air, because they're a party to the contract as well.
I think if we need to modify the language of the contract, at the end of the day, whether it's a county or private business, if it's a money loser, then we need to kind of take steps to change that. And if that requires not doing that, we have revenue coming in from the other the lunch and the dinners. From where I sit, I'm okay with just amending the language of the contract to get rid of the breakfast hours.
John?
Discussing the issue with many of the pilots, Ross reflects their feeling, as clearly as I'm hearing it from them, that the breakfast opportunity was an enhancement to the airport experience, lasted for decades even. So if it was losing money, then why did it last so long, and why so many pilots are upset that it's gone?
I think the money issue is a little more complicated than what is simply paid to the county in terms of our contract. The money issue also is reflected in avgas sales, how many small pilots are flying into the airport. Our avgas sales declined year over year since the cafe has been discontinued. So there's a lot of elements that go along with that as well. There's the avgas, there's tie downs and parking and overnight and like I said, the general sales from those customers that are no longer coming in because of the cafe.
Yeah.
The memo that Ross put together, the intent of that wasn't to state a direction to the committee. The committee certainly has that authority in the board as far as modifying the contract. The intent was to really clarify the record on what the committee had accepted in the past or what was conveyed to the committee regarding changes in the restaurant operation. So what Ross did was go back through and look at minutes and recordings and even video of the discussions to determine what in fact was known by the committee when, and if there were any informal approvals of the board or of the committee to allow certain changes. So that's what that memo did. It really, and by the end of the review and kind of compiling all the records, you know, it was clear to Ross and I that the committee didn't convey any approvals in the past. So I think the possibilities are broad. The committee shouldn't feel obligated one way or the other. It's certainly within the committee's authority to modify the contract or to, in whatever manner you want. But there were, from our perspective and reviewing all the records, there were no informal committee approvals in the past that now we're just trying to get to a contract, a formal written contract. So I think that all of the options are on the table. I think the committee could go whichever way they want.
Claudia, you have something to say?
You know, the last time I looked at the contract, it did say that there was supposed to be breakfast service, and I don't know of anything that's officially changed that. And I also want to say I did not receive Ross's memo.
The memo went to some key leaders, but we didn't send it out to everybody. I do have a copy of the memo if we want to pull it up. It's only a 2-page memo.
Rachel?
The committee wants.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess on that note, if it says that we shouldn't have, if the contract doesn't state dinners, then we shouldn't accept the revenue either, right? I mean, it was my understanding our county attorney's office looked at this several months ago, went back doing exactly what it sounds like this memo is doing that I have not read, and did make a determination. It did go through committee. There were discussions about it, and he did quite a bit of research on it. We pay our county attorney an awful lot of money to look into those things. I know that he did his due diligence for that previously, but if we're saying, okay, we aren't going to take that into consideration and we shouldn't consider if it's not doing the breakfast or the lunch, but it's never saying it's doing the dinner, then, you know, we shouldn't take his money. By all accounts, they're like one of the top ones on TripAdvisor. They're bringing in all this money, all this extra awareness to our airport, which we all love. And, you know, so I think we need to be fair here. Brian, do you want to touch on what research you did previously with that?
I did look at the meeting minutes and notes in the file in the county attorney's office. To be fair, Ross did bring some stuff to my attention that I had not seen. There were other minutes and other communications, emails that I did not see in either the minutes, the electronic minutes from these meetings, or from the file in the county attorney's office. But the picture was a little different when Ross brought what he found to my attention. There was some communication I didn't see before.
I'd love to see the memo. I haven't seen it.
Well, you're interested in making a motion to that effect to return the money?
Well, does it say that, I mean,
You want that, Richard?
does it say that we're collecting money on dinner? What does the contract say?
That was funny.
Just figure it.
Oh, I like that.
I was being
So, I know,
facetious, but I understand your point. But I mean, it would be functional a vote.
Well, I would...
I'm not in favor of
appreciate to defer
tipping my
the-
hand. I'm not in favor of turning the money back.
Yeah. I just want to get it right, so I'll defer that over to Rich.
Okay,
That's
Rich?
Just not spend a lot of time on this, but I believe we did discuss this prior, and I know there's new board members here, but this was officially discussed a while back, whether whatever got on the record or didn't get on the record. But just a little brief history. As you know, I took the FBO over almost 8.5 years ago. Carol's Cafe was there. She did a great job. It was a very small place. It served at best maybe 15, 17 people when you packed them in there. She had a very fortunate deal with the county. It was $150 a month to rent the place, and her gas, electric, water, sewer, even her garbage was all taken care of. There was no expenses to her. She made very little money. It was just her and maybe a waitress, and she had a cook with her. It was a nice benefit to the community. But as I've said, that what prior boards were expecting out of me when they awarded me the FBO was to grow the airport, not just for a few disappointed pilots. It was for the bigger picture, which is our general public. A lot of people, you know, support the local airport, pay for this local airport. So I opened it up, and now we have dinner, okay, which some like, some don't like. We're going back to lunch, which will be Memorial Day to Columbus Day again. We did rank number 4 out of 111 restaurants on TripAdvisor, which is a well-respected site for a restaurant. And I haven't even been open a year, only May 11th. I already gave the county, I think it was $28,700 for that short period that I've been open. That's well more than what the cafe does in, gosh, I think 8 years. So again, I believe that the intent here was to grow the airport, to generate revenue, which I'm still doing and we're doing. And you actually save money when Carol's, unfortunately, chose not to continue on. And I did ask her, there was no dispute with Carol and I. I clearly asked her if she'd like to run the new restaurant, and she said I'm much too old and it was too much of an undertaking. So the restaurant has become very successful. I said, matter of fact, guys, I mean, I've spent $1.5 million on the place. I'm offering a parking lot, no cost to the county, that not only benefits the restaurant, but it benefits the county, whether it's Balloon Festival, guests, out of my pocket. That's another $125,000. So I think going back and forth here, I think my intent is good. I know we've got some disappointed pilots that want breakfast, but at the end of the day, breakfast isn't going to support the bigger picture of trying to get more revenue. And not to speak of the revenue I'm generating that I give a percentage back, there's still the land lease that will be there for the next 40 years on the restaurant. So I really feel I'm doing a big part. I don't believe anybody was misled. Everything was totally discussed that I was going to turn the old cafe into an office, which it is now, an additional space, which has been redone again at my dime, which in a year and a half from now, depending on the outcome of where we go, it may not be mine, or who knows where it'll go. But in no way have I ever shortchanged this board or the county, or anybody else for that matter. So if anybody's got questions, I'll certainly answer the questions.
Yeah, Rich.
Sure.
I love the aviation restaurant. I think it's great. All I'm saying is, would we be still open to the option, if someone came along and wanted to reopen a breakfast situation, would we be open to that? Is it a possibility? Somebody independent of you and the aviator restaurant wanted to open up a breakfast thing?
Absolutely, John, and I'd have no problem with it. Now, right now, someone could absolutely have the opportunity. Now they'd probably have to build a standalone like I did, but the opportunity is open to everyone. Everyone has the same opportunities I've had at that airport to invest money. But as we all know, I'm the only one that's invested money into the airport. The only one. I don't know of anybody even coming forward at this point. But my lease will be up in another, I think we've got a year and a half left. And depending on the outcome of how things turn out, that terminal building will be available again to the next person if it's not me, and that certainly could be turned back in. But I don't believe that anybody would look at it as a financial situation where they'd say, boy, I can make it. Like I said, Carol paid $150 a month. That was it. That's all she paid. The county was subsidizing that restaurant. The county was losing money operating that restaurant. She paid for nothing. $150, that's it. And a small percentage of her sales came back, which was minimal. Now, just so you know, last Friday, Saturday, restaurants are very difficult. It takes time. I'm going to be considered new for the next 3 or 4 years. We had 97 dinners on Saturday last week, and we had 94 on Friday, and the numbers keep getting better. Now, those are respectful numbers for a restaurant. So I do keep getting better and better, and the better I get, the better it gets for the sharings of costs that I'm giving back to the county.
So what I'm just suggesting is that we amend it to help you, but we don't amend it in a way that would exclude another breakfast opportunity, that we leave that door open.
That door's open right now.
Yeah, the way it's written. I'm just saying when we rewrite this.
You can rewrite it however you want at the end of my lease. And like I said, anybody could open a restaurant and do the same thing I'm doing, or breakfast on the field. They'd have to, go to the board, get a land lease, build a standalone structure, or wait till my lease is up. And if they want to convert the old cafe back into a restaurant, which I highly doubt anyone would. Like I said, seating capacity at best was maybe 17 people. And I've operated for 8 years, and it was busy at certain times, but during the winter it was very quiet. She would close it sometimes right after lunch at 1 o'clock, and
So we could rewrite this agreement, accommodate you, maybe keep open the possibility of opening that section of the terminal where it used to be, or another section of the airport
Oh, anywhere in the airport. Right now, my lease includes the old cafe space, which was talked through all the committee meetings, that was going to be converted into office space, which it is. It's already done. It's been renovated. It's completely done. But a year and a half from now, if someone came to you and said, hey, I want that cafe, the old cafe, I want to turn it back into a diner for breakfast, that would be the board's position. They certainly could do that.
Happen now, or 6 months from now, or 3 months from now, or what is the lease?
Okay. Well, I have a lease right now.
All right, so what is the committee's pleasure? We know what we have now. Do you want to direct the county attorney to change the agreement to modify for the use it's entertaining now, which is different from what we have in the contract, Matt?
Language that leaves open a possibility for a morning cafe.
Mhm.
Would that violate?
I just don't want to slam the door. I want to leave the door open to somebody who may come across.
I just want to make the motion to relieve the breakfast responsibility from Rich Air. And if we need to, if you want to include that, that's fine, as long as that obligation is no longer part of their lease.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Ron seconded it with discussion. Craig?
The county treasurer's brought this up several times in monthly reports about the contract. So redefining the contract now brings it into line.
Yeah, that was all our intent was to get the contract to agree with what's actually going on out there. That's all. And however that needs to be done, get it done. Because what they're actually doing is not compliant with the contract. So let's amend the contract to make it acceptable for what they're doing.
Okay.
And
Rachel?
Mr. Strauss, someone did come and want to do a diner. I certainly could tell them, yes, no problem, go right ahead. I could lease them the little bit of space that's there now, but my lease is up in a year and a half, so I don't know if it'd benefit anybody until...
Well, I'm saying is let's include language that doesn't prohibit.
Okay. Rachel, I want you to have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just two quick clarifications then. One, the advisory group has been requested to look into a vending machine. Ross did work with purchasing and worked with Steve over at Rich Air, and I guess the vending machine, for whatever reason, isn't working out. But Rich Air, at their own expense, ended up putting in kind of like a what do you call it, like an honor box with snacks and things like that, so that pilots can go in the room and have something to eat. And so we really appreciate that. That did come from a request from the advisory group. But secondly, does the current contract allow for us to take revenue for the dinners? Because if it doesn't, we should be amending it at the same time to be able to take the revenue from the dinner.
I believe it does, because I believe it's a percentage of sales, yes.
Percentage of sales overall.
The difference is there's no obligation to provide dinners
Okay.
from my reading of the FBO contract. And I would say that I'm also confident that Mr. Lapper and I together could craft some language to present to the board at the meeting that would both relieve Rich Air of the current breakfast obligation and leave an escape hatch if another independent operator wanted to come in and sublease a portion of the terminal for a cafe at that operator's expense. I think that's something we could craft.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
I have
Yeah.
a 3 o'clock appointment.
Okay.
To be excused. I had no idea we'd be going till 3 or past.
We lose, do we have a quorum?
Yes. 11. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yes. Yeah, we have, we're good.
Yep, you do.
Where are we at this? Mark, you have something quick?
My understanding, the public speaks after the committee votes.
There'll be there'll be privilege of the floor, but you have something now?
I'll keep it to the end.
If you can do it quick.
Protocol.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item on the referral pending items list is another referral from the Airport Advisory Group, and this is regarding the Alternative parking plan that Mr. Skimmerhorn has presented to the county. I guess just a week and a half ago, we did get the updated drawings. DPW engineering got the updated drawings, and they're currently reviewing those at this time.
Yeah. And I just wanted, can I address it first, Rich? We got the drawings, I think, a couple months ago.
I told you I'd have them 10 days from our meeting 2 months ago, and I had them handed in 9 days after our meeting. The county has had the plans for over 2 months. Engineer drawings.
Okay.
Where did they go?
And where were they sent?
Send them out to the committee members. I have copies here again.
We got copies.
If you want.
Yes.
I can pass them out.
The issue I want to address is that I talked to Rachel about the airport and the master plan. Part of the master plan includes the viable area which you've developed somewhat with the restaurant, et cetera, and other things that have been discussed about bringing about. We, in so much as a committee, have not brought that forward and addressed it because of the things we've had going on, mostly the land acquisition, obstruction removal, and the runway extension, and other things that you have done that we've been abiding by. But it's a critical part of the development of the airport, and we do need that brought to the forefront because it's recognized by the FAA, et cetera, especially when we go looking for grants that we're complying with our plan moving forward. So I asked Rachel if the advisory group would look at that plan. I know Ross has had, and Jeff has had many recommendations about moving tie-down areas, removing the old T-hanger, some buildings that are out of date, et cetera, and making some changes, but we certainly financially weren't in a position in the last few years with all the other things we had on our docket. But this plan and the development thereof, where more developers like yourself might come forward and want to do things at the airport, we need to have some system in place or attraction and approval process or promotion to do it. And we haven't really addressed that, and it would be good for the advisory committee to look at.
And just to clarify, you're talking about the master plan.
The master
Okay.
plan, yes, but I'm talking about a specific land area where the restaurant was built, the terminal, some of the hangars, all that area needs to be looked at, because what's going on now is Rich has come for us for T-hangars, jet hangars, office space, restaurant, and certainly we want the airport to grow, but we want to do it in the scope and scheme of a plan which we have to date, so that we don't interrupt future progress or how we want the layout to go.
So to be clear, then the advisory group will be tasked with looking at updating the master plan and making recommendations. But
Well, they'll look at the master plan, maybe they'll like what's there. I mean, and then
specifically about this parking proposal, that came from the airport advisory group, was kicked over to this committee, and that's where at the last meeting, Rich said he'll have the plans to us in 10 days. He saved the cost of us going out. You guys all recall this conversation? So it was to be decided on back by this committee regarding the pavement.
But in the realm backing up, with what he submitted,
Yep.
we need to look at the master plan to make sure it comes in compliance with how we want to
So are you saying
proceed.
you don't want to move forward with this until the airport group?
I don't think so.
looks
I
at
think
some
we
of
should
the
review,
advisory plan?
I think we should review what the plan is. I know that Ross has done a study on parking, et cetera, and asked all the parties to be for their input, et cetera. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think in review of what we're doing, we keep on approving things without looking at the whole plan.
I just feel like it's a game of ping pong at the moment, but,
Would you just want to, do you just want to approve it, put a motion on the floor to approve
I
it?
just want to say what a great job you guys have all done, because the T-hangars that I built, the 4 existing hangars, they're all part of the master plan. The restaurant, part of the master plan. The 4 additional hangars that I proposed today, where there's not, that's on the master plan. I pulled everything from the CT Mill master plan that you've done. So there's nothing that I've done that's out of sequence with what the master plan called for. Maybe I move it too fast a pace, and that's what gets everyone...
I don't, that isn't part of the question at all, but as you can see, there's new members on this that don't even know what the master plan is. So as we proceed, it's good to bring the master plan into effect to see what the scope and procedure was as we move forward. It would be helpful to them that they know that we're following some sort of direction that we've had.
Rich was just hoping to do the parking lot work now because the season is coming up, so it's just a timing season.
Ron?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Apparently the engineering drawings didn't make their way to DPW or the airport manager. They were sent to Rachel, Kevin, and Brian.
That's who they were supposed to.
Brian, but they were not sent to staff.
Oh, I don't know.
At the last meeting, we did say that the plans would be sent to the county attorney.
Right.
So that was, I think it was followed. But at this committee meeting, he said he'd give them to the county attorney. He did.
So they just need to look at them?
Where does it stand?
If that's the case, then I've dropped the ball because I don't recall getting the plan and I'm not saying I didn't, I just don't recall it. And I certainly did not recall forwarding them for
No.
engineering review. So
Yeah.
if that's the case, I dropped the ball and I apologize.
Will you just send them? Okay. And then maybe we could just leave it on the pending agenda and talk about it next month.
Well, let's have a little bit of discussion. We have Craig and Claudia and Matt. How do you feel about? Would you like to do the parking now?
I think everybody should feel confident with it. If they haven't got their hands on it, then they should be given the opportunity to look over things. Just my opinion.
Can we make sure, though, it's looked at between now and the next
Yes,
meeting?
yeah.
I have not received the plan.
We didn't? I thought it was an email.
It's floating
And
around.
your feelings? Do you have feelings on the plans,
Where would these
Claudia?
I don't.
We can be patient, there's no dire situation.
Well,
It's not a problem.
Well, the issue is it needs to be discussed, and Rachel gets frustrated, because stuff does go month to month, and it's difficult. So we're here, so the plans have been submitted, some people have looked at, let's hear what they've got to say, so that at least we can move forward with them.
I gotta get a copy of the plan.
Okay, you need a copy, Matt needs a copy, Craig, you need a copy, okay? And you can understand, and then next month we'll be prepared to discuss it, okay? And if we can get consensus, maybe we can move.
Is there a copy already available?
I'm putting out
Do we have a
Facebook.
parliamentarian?
Did they really get emails?
I'm fairly sure.
Just a point of clarification, I'm not frustrated. I'm very excited over the progress and movement and the dialogue and the involvement of everyone. And thank you for your support.
I was gonna say, we're the leaders.
Okay, Ross, we can move to the next item.
Okay, next item on the referral pending items list is the committee to revisit the proposal from Rich Air for construction of additional T-hangars. So I'm not sure which T-hangars Mr. Skimmerhorn is proposing at this point in time, which ones he's talking about revisiting. If you could update the committee perhaps and remind us exactly which T-hangars you're referring to, or if you want to bring it back for next committee.
This is going back to our meeting several months ago where a year and a half ago, Ross had stated that there was new T-hangars proposed at Warren County Airport. And then 2 months ago, when we asked the question if the application for the state grant went in, and he said, it was never filed, but he told everyone there was T-hangars there. And that's when I said, well, geez, if it doesn't fly, I have a demand for them. Mine are all full. I'll certainly take the T-hangars, no cost to the county again. I'll build them, do another land lease, and rebuild them. There was also a proposal where I had 4 T-hangars to the north, by the northern T-hangars, that I've brought to the board a couple times, where I would build those as well. So that's basically where we're at, and there's hard copies of all this stuff, and for these T-hangars that was discussed before. So I don't know where Ross is, because the last 2 months, we asked about the T-hangars, and there was nothing filed as far as what he said was going to be done a year and a half ago.
So those T-hangars are the southern T-hangars. That's the grant application for to replace the old T-hangars at the south end of the airport, the ones that were constructed in the 40s, and replace them with new T-hangars on the outer tie-down, turn that other space into tie-down space. That grant application was submitted this morning, as a matter of fact. The state finally did solicit the application, so that process has been initiated. So the application is in, and now the state will evaluate all the different grant applications that they received, rank them, and make their announcements. I don't expect it to happen very quickly based on prior year's application process. It does take them quite some time to rank all the various projects and then get approval to award the grants, but the application is in. The project's, I think it has really good, strong justification, and I'm hopeful that the county will receive the state grant for those hangars.
For clarity, are you talking about the old teak hangars?
Yes.
Yes.
And they're going to go in the same general area, same footprint?
Yes. What I said is there must have been a misinterpretation to the board. A year and a half ago, he told the public that there was going to be additional T hangars. It went in the Post-Star. There was a big article about it. I said, boy, that's news to me. I didn't know anything about it because we're pretty versed to what goes on over there. And I've been full with all my hangars. The jet hangars are full, the T hangars are full. And I said, geez, I know how grants work. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. But I want to be proactive and keep developing the airport like I said I would do from the get-go. Well, 2 months ago I asked where we were at, or I think a couple of us asked at a board meeting, and Ross said, well, I haven't submitted anything. So there's still no guarantee. I hope the county gets them, whatever. But if the application just went in today, there's no guarantee that we're going to get a state grant when there's so many other dire needs at local airports and funding being cut. All I've been saying from the get-go is I will build those T hangars, no expense to the county again, put them on the tax rolls because these are all taxable buildings, and then the county will receive more income from me on land leases.
The issue I have, I was told that the hangar, unless I'm mistaken, is too close to the fuel farm, and we wanted to change that through the master plan.
That is part of the grant application. The grant application tears these old hangars down. This is the fuel farm, so these two old hangars get torn down and gets repaved, and this space gets turned into tie-down spots. We'll probably, leave a couple spots short here for the new fuel farm access drive that's going to be in construction next month, or this month perhaps. And then the new hangars will be constructed out here on this tie-down space. So you're flip-flopping the two, so the hangars go on this ramp, the new tie-downs get placed on this ramp, and we have better access and safety for operations around the fuel farm and around these hangars. It frees up this space, makes it a lot more better visibility, no more blind spots for aircraft taxiing. It's a much better flow for everyone involved. The other location is up here at the end of the county's T hangars. We have 6 bays up here as well. The airport layout plan includes additional 2 bays on the end of our T hangar here as well. We included that as an add alternate to our grant application. If there's enough funding that the county authorizes in terms of the grant application, if the bids come in really well, we may be able to afford to construct the add alternate, which is 2 bays on this northern T hangar. I believe that Steve Abbott has submitted to me a sketch of a proposed 3 box hangars, I believe is what he wanted to show at the end of this paved area here as well. This is part of the county's ramp. In talks and discussions with Steve, I suggested that you relocate those boxes over to the other side in this general area so that the county could move forward with expanding the county's T hangar here, and that this might be a good location suitable for those 3 box hangars. I did ask Steve, I thought it would be prudent for him to check the property lines to kind of show where the Glens Falls Transit property line is in relation to the airport property, so that make sure there's adequate space for those hangars to get placed there, but I suggested that as a good possible location for that proposal.
And
I haven't heard anything back.
And just to clarify, Dan, the T hangar proposal that Ross was talking about is, I would do the same very thing right there. Just saying, if the grant money wasn't going to be accepted, which we thought it wasn't until 2 months ago, because I guess it's a new round of funding, or I guess it was never filed, is what he told us. I'm just saying, I would start, if the board approved me, I'd build 2 more like I did to the north. I could be in the ground in 60 days, if approved. And again, again, we might wait 1 year, 2 years for grant. We don't know.
Okay. All right.
But there's a need, and
Yep.
So.
Craig?
Oh, I'm waiting to start them. Yeah, I'm waiting. We're waiting on environmental.
Yeah. Okay. So then, how does that occur? Ground lease, I'm not familiar with how everything works on the ground over here and who can do what. Is there already a master agreement that allows that with the FBO?
There's a master plan of the airport.
There's a master plan.
Right, this spells out all the expansion, where things can go, and everything we're talking about is part of the master plan.
But the who does what is my question.
That'd be a ground lease, just like we have now.
Right.
New ground lease.
Okay.
I have eight structures now, 7, the office is getting ready to start, but I have 8 ground leases now for 40 years with the county. If I did the 2 T hangars, there'd be 2 more 40-year ground leases where the county would get a land lease for the next 40 years. And then there'd, if we did the other one, the same thing. But I also have hangars 5 and 6 next to those big ones that the county board has already approved. We're just waiting on, I think it's environmental for bats in the trees, I think, and we're any day on that, I've been
That pay
told.
is still...
Chairman Conover, you had something to lend to this?
Yeah, I do. It's something I've been thinking on here, and I spoke to staff about this, and I spoke to you, Chairman Gerard. I really think that what I'd like staff to do is take a look at some of the site plan review processes that exist in the Queensbury, Bolton, and offsetting municipalities, and to develop an application process from a developer such as Rich or anyone, where they want to do something, we'll be handing the application. They get certain material to us, like under a concept plan or approval. They know exactly what's required to submit to us. They get it in, and then they know they're going to get a decision, say in 30 or 60 days, whatever we determine to be an appropriate turnaround. Then they can move into like a preliminary, where maybe they can start investing some dollars in a little bit more sophisticated. So initially they get a concept plan approval. That doesn't need to be anything fancy. Once they get that, then they can move into preliminary, and once they get the approval on preliminary, we can move to final. Just really with date certain, so that the application has a date, right? So we know exactly when the applicant came in, we know exactly when they submitted, and then also, I think that appended to that should be a copy of our standard land lease. And the reason I say that is because I think that there may, and I underscore the word may, at least in my mind, there may be 1 or 2 issues associated with our existing land lease that the committee really needs to hammer out. You recall in the last land lease there was some question, for example, on the parking, who was going to do the parking, and I said, well, we get a grant, we'll do it. If we don't get a grant, Rich will do it. It would seem to me that the land lease should be a standalone document. It should say who does what, up into and including snow removal. Right now I think the existing land lease calls for a certain thing. Maybe that still serves the airport, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. So that, again, when a developer comes in, boom, they get the application, attached to the application is the land lease, and they're off and going, right? It's very formal kind of process, and I know I'm asking for something on top of an already busy staff, but I think it really would serve the airport going forward if we could get this done. It would be good for us, good for the developer. And I think that toward that end, I think that the committee, this committee, I think is going to need to probably schedule an additional meeting or 2 just to go over the land lease, just to make sure it's current. So when we when our attorney hands the land lease to Mr. Lapper over there, he knows that it's something that is pretty standard, and this is what we're looking for. And again, it would be something that we would hand to any developer. Like I say, I think there are a couple of things in that land lease that we need to think through as the owners of the airport.
In the interest of time, we've got to, we're way, Ron?
Rich, just 2 questions. The circle, the parking lot circle, the renovations that you want to do, that doesn't change any of the dimensions, right? I think it
Right.
beautifies that circle.
Right.
The other question I have, so, I mean, that's something that is part of, I mean, that's part of the master plan, I mean, it's there. The other question I have is if the grant is gonna be delayed and we decide, let's do a new land lease on the property for the T hangars, then we still have the old ones in place.
Well, Ross was saying they were going to take those down because of safety issues with the new fuel farm. They were going to be removed, and that was going to be a tie-down area, like you see these planes in the far south corner here. So really, you would just be where the buildings are. If those footprints are 50 by, let's say, 140, 160, you would repave, resurface that area, and that would be tie-down. It's like that.
They're not very structurally sound.
No, they're terrible shape. Matter of fact, the building to the right of it, that's an original building that's probably 65, 70 years old as well. And that's another one that I would rebuild as well right there in its place. So you've got a willing person here that wants to develop the airport. And again, I'm willing to do any process, procedure that the board feels fit. I'm always agreeable.
Okay. All right, thanks. Craig?
So, on this, and Chairman Conover brought up a good point, a lot of times in towns, these proposals come up in front of the planning board for site plan review. Are these applicable to a site plan review by the town of Queensbury as well, or are we sitting as...
Now, all these go in front of Warren County. You guys are the ultimate decision makers on it.
How do we get away with that?
The town zoning administrator has determined that it doesn't go through the town.
Okay.
They still meet all the building codes and everything, so there's, your local building inspector, Tom McKinney, does all the inspections.
So it seems as if then what incumbent upon this committee is to act like a planning board going through the steps of the site plan review, including the seeker and ingress, egress, and stormwater and all of that. Huh, okay.
Ross, you want to continue?
Sure. As far as the application goes, I just like to point out for the community that there's a very big difference between, county development of hangars and private development of hangars. Mr. Skimmerhorn's proposing, 40-year land leases. You're talking current rates of about 29 cents per square foot for a land lease with a 5-foot buffer around the building, whereas with a county project, when you're getting 90% grant funding to construct hangars that you're going to be renting directly to the tenant, you're talking about a revenue source to the county of $70,000 to $80,000 a year for these two hangars, as opposed to a $7,000 to $8,000 a year land lease. So there's substantial revenue difference for the county if you proceed with those as county hangars.
Okay, next item.
Okay, next item on the agenda. Let's see, referral pending items. County attorney to review and determine ownership of restaurant equipment for the former airport cafe. Do you have any update on that for us?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. There were 4 items that it appeared that needed to be tracked down or investigated. Gas grill, an ice maker, gas range with a grill, and a hood with a fire suppression system. And Ross was not certain of the disposition of all of those items. He had some belief that the hood was removed during the remodeling, the termination of the diner of Carol's in there. He believes that it was taken out by Schermerhorn Construction when the diner was renovated. I talked to Mr. Lapper to try to get some more information on that, and he got to Dave, is it Routh, John? Dave Routh, who apparently was with Empire East and now is with Rich Air. He sent some detailed information late, looks like it was in the afternoon Friday. Said that the original owner, Ms. Veely, got rid of the original grill back when it was on a wooden stand. When she owned the cafe, the wooden stand was trashed per requirements of the Department of Health, and that he believes that it still shows up when the county sets up for the Balloon Fest. He believes it was returned to the county. As far as the ice machine, he says it was the original ice machine that was replaced with a new unit, and at the time that the the replacement was done, it was inoperable and pretty much junk when the coffee shop closed. He did not indicate where he believed that was right now. He indicated that the new grill was replaced by Kim Lucier when she owned Empire East, or when Carol was operating the coffee shop. She believes it was replaced with a better unit by Kim, and that unit was donated to the Open Door Ministry. Let's see, as far as the grill, the range with the grill, I didn't get any definitive information on that. As far as the hood, the range hood and fire suppression system, Mr. Routh believed that it was the original unit that was built in the 70s when that was cafe was put in place, and that this fire suppression system was partially rebuilt several years ago. He didn't know what happened to it after the remodel. He believes it was just taken out and that it was useless at that point. He said there were 2 fire extinguishers, 1 dry chemical and 1 wet sprayer unit. He believes the wet unit was currently in Basement County storage, and that the dry chemical was owned by the FBO at the time. So that's the information I received on the restaurant equipment. I don't know if Ross, I've not had a chance to give that information to Ross. I don't know if he has different information from that at this point.
Anyone have questions?
What end? What is it that we need?
But we simply need to be able to remove these items from our inventory list, with the county inventory list, and note the disposition of the items, and that'll be that. I don't believe that the items have any real value to the county, so...
Does that correspondence serve that purpose? The correspondence is the attorney just read, so what happened?
It does for me, yeah.
So you believe, Mr. Attorney, that satisfies?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So we don't need to be discussing greasy goods anymore?
No.
Good. Thank you, Chairman. Next.
Okay, and then referral pending items, an update for the committee regarding the response to comments received at the April 5th public hearing for the Runway 119 extension. I have checked with our consultant who is working on draft responses. I know she spent all weekend working on them. She was hopeful that she would have them ready for us this week. She did ask for 2 weeks to get those comments finished and off to the FAA for their review. She does need to consult with the FAA on some of those comments and questions that were received at the public hearing before she drafts all the responses. There are some complicated, detailed questions she needs to draft responses to. So, long story short, a couple weeks we hope to have drafts off to the FAA for their approval. Once that process is complete, we can make them available to the public and the board and the committee for review, discussion, whatever you would like to do.
Claudia?
If we can just keep this on as a pending item so that
Yes.
when she does send them off to FAA, we can look at them too at the same time. That would be nice.
Okay. Anyone else?
Who's the consultant doing that?
That is CNS Engineers. That would be Gail McKee. She's the one who gave the presentation at the public hearing.
Ron?
So, Mr. Chairman, just so Mr. Skimmerhorn and this committee has a direction, if we review parking lot, circle, and the 2 new hangars that have been proposed, how do we do that? What's the next step? What are we going to do?
Well, next month's meeting, if you look at it, you'll have questions or not. You'll be for or against. We'll have discussion, and then we'll move on it.
Okay.
That's if someone puts a motion on the floor, unlike Rachel, who didn't want to put her motion on the floor.
But I mean the comments about we have a master plan. This fits the master plan. So we've gotten through that scenario, and the engineering for these 2 new buildings will have the environmental issues, the drainage, and et cetera, included. Is that...
Right.
Well, the new buildings, I think Rich would...
There would be minimal stormwater because it's already blacktop where he's proposing these new hangars. So there'd be minimal stormwater requirements and minimal environmental review. Yeah, and there's already a master's secret on the airport. So, I mean, there's a process, but it's not a huge process to do.
Okay.
It's just the board saying, yeah, let's move forward, go through proper channels like we always do. And the engineers, town engineers, or county engineers sign off on it when it's completed, and that's it.
So we would be extending a land lease for these 2 new buildings.
I don't think You're not pointing at the right place.
But that's why we need the
So,
plan in front of us.
I want to pull up the map. So, the map shows that you're looking at, Ron, shows extension here.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think what we're talking about is over here.
I'm talking these two right here.
Right, but what's everybody else talking about?
Well, we were talking about, Mr. Skimhorn said if we don't get the grant, he would be willing to do that, but he's
Right.
also proposed this.
I've had, that's a new plan that Ross submitted, that I just received yesterday.
Oh, okay.
I have a plan. We already have 2 more hangars that are already approved, we're just waiting on the environmental, I think it was, to come back from.
Is that right?
That's what I was pointing was understood.
So there is a plan for these 2 buildings here?
2 more were approved.
Yeah, there's two
Okay.
more already approved. Yep,
All right.
and we can jump to that. That is the next item on the agenda, so
And-
we might as well.
And I think Ross made the point, correct me if I'm wrong, your submission was for a grant for the county
Yes.
to construct T-hangars,
Right,
which
right.
means that we would own them
Right.
and get the rent, which is far different than Rich building them and getting a cut of it.
Okay.
So that's a decision-making process that you would have to weigh into
Right.
how you proceed. If you want to wait for the grant, if we're successful, or if you would like to award it to Rich and have them
But-
get built and...
So the next 2 that we're talking about now, do we have to do a land lease for those?
Yes. Okay. 2,
These 2 right here.
those are called 5 and 6. Those the board already approved.
Yes,
We're
yes.
already, I'm just waiting for an environmental sign-off. It was a bat and a tree, I think it was.
And then we have to do a land lease?
Yes, what we need to do, so these 2 hangars are already approved, and once the environmental process is complete, the FAA has the short environmental assessment form. Once they make their determination, then we can move forward with the ground lease and finalize the ground lease terms, which as we've discussed, we need to address the paving issue between the 2 hangars, because that apparently had not been clear in everyone's mind as to who was going to be responsible for paving between the hangars. So that process, so we have reached out to the FAA. We, like we discussed last October, that when we went to our programming meeting, we would have a conversation with the FAA about eligibility of funding and the likelihood of funding for paving that space between those 2 new jet hangars. The lease discussions, the committee approval said if the FAA won't pay for a grant to do that paving, then Mr. Skimmerhorn would do it. And as we reported previously, the FAA said that is not eligible for funding. They will not issue a grant for paving up to private hangars that do not serve the general use areas
Okay.
of the airport.
So where are we on that? We'll have to discuss that.
So
at the next
when
meeting.
we finalize any agreement, or is the lease agreement already finalized, the
The
language in
lease
there?
is substantially drafted. Mr. Lapper and I have agreed on essentially all the terms. I think we even put in language about the paving contingent on grant availability.
Steve can talk about it.
I was just curious, there was a resolution passed in July of 2016 to apply for a paving grant application for those 2 corporate hangars, and I wonder if they actually were submitted, and then the FAA rejected it, or are we just going by?
No, the
back and forth
FAA does
communication?
not accept grant applications that are not programmed, and the FAA would not allow us to add it to our programming at our meeting in October.
Of last year?
Yes.
Then why was a resolution in July of last year passed to submit one? Was it ever, resolution 299?
I'm not sure what...
What is your question, Steve?
My question is, did they actually ever submit a grant? I mean, I'd ask documentation on whether or not the FAA has actually rejected it. And he said, oh, I got an email, I'll get it to you, and I never got it. Or there's been no specific indication, and according to the, if the FAA is not accepting it and they did submit the grant, then has anything been submitted to the state? The state looks like to accept it.
See, we deal with the FAA as much as these guys do, and without an application being submitted, it's just, and again, I'm not saying someone's giving them misinformation, but you were supposed to submit an application, and if it wasn't going to be passed, then I would pick up and bear the cost. Now, there's another round of funding out right now that we talked to the FAA about, and the deadline is tomorrow. And I don't believe you
And that's for the federal?
No.
State,
State.
which
All right.
will go towards...
Because I'll answer your federal. I was there at the meeting
This is state.
when it was asked about the federal, and with their fiscal years, no, we could not get into that because we didn't submit in time for their fiscal years and how they appropriate.
Again, like I said, I'm...
So
prepared
that
to
the federal part, I'm getting confused with what you're asking. When the state part, I'm not familiar with.
Well, that's how you're funding the T-hangers in state. There's $20 million...
But my assumption was previously the paving was done by the FAA.
Right, you guys have always done the paving.
Yes, and that was through the,
You pulled it out of, the T-hangers, you pulled out of, I think it was a grant, I think it was money out of your budget you used for the T-hangers.
That was a grant.
no, it was a grant.
The grant, okay.
And it was submitted and
Now, why
appropriate.
did they get a grant for those? Those were privately built, but not a grant for the two additional big hangars.
Because we had time to
Policy
submit
at FAA
for the
was they don't
fiscal
no
year.
longer fund paving ramp space up to private hangars. It's just a change in policy at the FAA.
I'm just
Plus-
saying, you never
plus-
submitted anything to try.
Plus the submission was done a year in advance so
Now,
that
there's
they...
another submission deadline tomorrow, I believe, isn't it, Ross, to get...
That's for state grants, and the paving was supposed to be an AIP grant, a federal grant, but that was what was available. There was never any discussion about whether or not there'd be state funding available for paving up to the jet hangars.
Okay. So, in the interest of where we are now, we have the two jet hangars. Are we good with the jet
Yeah,
hangars?
we're good with the, let's call them 5 and 6.
5 and
So
6
there's
are-
4 of them, yeah.
Okay.
We're just waiting on an environmental issue.
Okay.
So moving forward now, Mr. Skimmerhorn has requested the county consider an additional 4 more corporate hangars in addition to the 2 that have already been approved. So, what Mr. Skimmerhorn has submitted, let me scroll down to it, is right here. Let me...
Yep. Which, that's on the county's master plan, just to clarify, in your CNS manual, right there.
All right, so on the airport layout plan, which you're referring to, there is 4 additional hangars already shown on the airport layout plan. That would be this one, which Mr. Skimmerhorn already has approval for a ground lease, and then there are 2 additional ones shown right here on the airport layout plan as well. So, Mr. Skimmerhorn wanted to do 4 additional. These 2 here are not shown on the airport layout plan. So regardless of what we do moving forward, if for this proposal for 4 more hangars, it would require an update to the airport layout plan. It would require FAA approval, it would require environmental approval, and of course, county approval.
For two
So,
of those.
pardon me?
For 2 of the
For
4.
two. I can still get to 6 and 7.
Right, these 2 here are already shown on the airport layout plan. These 2 are also shown on the airport layout plan. These 2 right here are not shown. So if you're looking for approval to do all 4 or just these 2, that's a little bit different. There may not be a need to go to the airport.
6 and 7 could be
Yeah,
approved. Are you looking for 6 and 7 approval?
7 and 8.
7 and 8, wow. Okay, you're looking...
5 and 6 are approved,
Right.
look for 7 and 8, and that is exactly what's on the master plan of the airport.
Okay, what's the committee's pleasure on 7 and 8?
Please,
No,
can
that-
you take this down? This is not...
Yeah,
What is this?
I don't have a
Someone
problem,
who-
I mean, it meets the master...
Just hold on.
I don't
hold
have a
on.
problem, it meets the master plan. There certainly will be an environmental issue, I mean, not an environmental issue, if there's a drainage problem, it'll show up pretty quick, in terms of what we need to do in terms of dry wells or whatever to take the runoff. I mean, there's gonna be some pretty good roof areas here, that water's gonna go someplace. But other than that, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, Claudia, you have something?
That just oriented on the ground, that's the area where we do the parking for the Balloon Fest people, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
Part of it,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So we already gave him permission for the first 2 that
These
are up
two.
and down, so
Yep.
he wants the next 2.
Yes.
Okay.
We are building new parking elsewhere.
Matt, you had something?
I was just reminding Supervisor Braber that we will be adding additional parking in another area to compensate for any lost parking, in case that was a concern.
Again, there's a need, my hangars are all full. And I have one plane that has a wingspan of 100 feet, which will take up 1 whole hangar on. So I have, right now, out of those 4, 2 of them that will be committed.
More checks, you would say.
help, and that was the whole goal here, was to build this, to get where.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Rich, first, I think it's great. Thank you for your interest in your investment. This is tremendous. I just wonder that perhaps we could give an indication, the committee could, of additional to, assuming for the moment the appropriate approvals to be secured at this stage. But I also wonder, in terms of this area, since all these hangars are yours, one of the issues that we had last winter was you have snow clearing people on, we have snow clearing people on. Would it be best to amend the land leases so that snow clearing responsibilities, for example, for this area fall to you
Oh, we'll be on, we have no problem.
as the developer? All I'm saying is as we move forward, I could see where that might be an efficient thing to do, at least maybe to the ramp.
I'll do one better, I'll amend the lease for the 4 that exist now, that have been there 10 years, and I'll do the snow plowing for those as well.
That I think really deserves.
That certainly can all be addressed, but I think Rich is looking for 7 and 8 approval.
Yes, and that will complete the master plan without any of us having to go outside this room for approvals. 'Cause that
Okay.
is what
Can I
exists
just get
now.
the county attorney's input of how you would like us to proceed for 7 and 8?
I suspect that a vote by the committee on whether to grant a land lease for hangars 7 and 8, subject to detailed plans and a workout of terms of a land lease with Rich Ayers' attorney, and then we'll go before the full board for the approvals, and we'll
Okay. Jeffrey,
execute the
you have
same way.
something?
No, I guess Ross we did print up the concept plan that CNS had put together when we asked them to review it. And so that's really where the decision point is for the committee. There are certain ones that are on the master plan that was created back a decade or so ago and finally approved 8 years ago. CNS looked at it and said to maximize the space, they recommended this layout, and that's what was sent back to Steve Abbott with the initial policy review, or with the initial proposal review. So I think Ross, I don't know if Ross has had an opportunity to explain that layout and the benefits of that layout as compared to the Skimmerhorn.
Discussion to date, backed up by what Ross says, these two are able to go forward. Is that correct, Ross?
The
7 and 8.
7 and 8.
Otherwise, we just
are-
wasted a lot of time.
7 and 8 are shown on the current airport layout plan. They are conditionally approved. They would need further approval by the FAA. So it's not like we can't go back to the FAA to get their approval. We still have to get final FAA approval for the construction of those buildings. There's details they need. They need to know the exact location, building heights, none of which I expect to be a problem, but there's still that final review process. The question came up for me in my mind because I saw a proposal that included 4 more hangars, and the way those hangars were laid out, it cut off a lot of usable county property out here, making it unavailable for future development. So as we always look to the future for planning purposes, we're always thinking 5, 10, even 20 years down the road. I want to say, what is the best use of county land out here? What do we own? What is available for future development? And in going through that process, I had asked CNS to take a look at the layout, what is available, because this is very prime real estate for the airport. It has access to all the utilities, it's flat, it's cleared, and it's close proximity to the main ramp. So it has a lot of value to the county and to the airport for development purposes. To continue extending those row of hangars straight out, you're blocking off access and future development for this area because there's wetlands through here. There would be no further access ability out through any other direction. And same thing in here. We got this drainage swell and we got land side facilities. So in order to maximize the available land, I wanted the committee to have this information available to them when making your decision on approving a layout for future hangar development.
But 7 and 8 were on a plan and were approved.
And 7 and 8, so if this is 5 and 6, there would be 2 more that would be out here that were thrown out on the airport layout plan.
Okay, but we're on 7 and 8 now.
Yep.
So what's the committee's pleasure with 7 and 8? Claudia?
I just want to know if we're doing this, are we still on the same 29 cents a square foot or whatever? Is that how we've been going forward?
Unless somebody tells me differently, I would draft them in the same way, because there was a resolution a couple of years ago that changed all the land lease rates to the same. So unless you tell me differently, I would go with that. That's in place.
And it's for something like 40 years? Is that what we're doing?
CPI is the standard escalation clause in those leases.
Matt?
Snow removal for the county's contracted for now, and I'll make that go away.
Hold on, Rich. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This actually is a question for you. How many hangars have you built since you got here to the airport?
How many in Warren County?
Have you? Yes.
The 4 that you see in the picture right there, those 4 right there. And then I just built those recently in the last 4 years.
Right.
Those are 12,000 square foot. All of them are 12,000 square foot. I built the restaurant right there. Get ready to start the office. Again, we were waiting for...
Once again, we're on 7 and 8. We're trying to get through 7 and 8.
The reason I asked that was...
We're running an hour over now. I'm just saying 7 and 8.
Would this alternative layout make more sense to you as a developer?
No. You know, we run and operate these jets. Like I said, one of these jets that's coming in has a 100-foot wingspan. As it is now, you can only get... The reason they design alleys is because of jet wash and when our APUs are on, usually the built-in generators, to twist and turn jets to go around corners. Now, I'm not saying you can't do it, but the jets that I have there are fairly large, decent size. Now, this would work if we wanted to put smaller airplanes, but again, we would have to go through the process, the county would, of environmental stuff. We'd have to spend a lot of money. I believe there is some wetlands up in the woods there. It would all have to be looked at. Right now, 7 and 8 could be approved per the master plan, and I can build 4 more and serve a need right now. And there are other areas on this airfield, on the master plan, that allow for many, many more hangars. So we're not giving up by this layout restricting. There's other uses that land could be used for.
Okay, so Claudia had a legitimate question about the 29 cents. Do you want to put a motion on the floor that says we enter into negotiations for a land lease for 7 and 8, pending some amount that you think would be, that we could drive at, that would be acceptable, or how would you want to do that, Brian?
I'll put that motion on the table.
Okay, so the square footage amount would be a negotiated item through some diligence on our end of it. Ron? We have a second? Okay, discussion? Go ahead, Rachel.
Thank you. How do we know, like, okay, I get you want to get more per, each square foot, but how do we know what that is and who's negotiate, like who's going to research all that? What are we going to look at? And then do we do that for are we doing this now across the board for any new land leases coming forward in Warren County?
My understanding would be that the prior resolution applies unless you tell me differently. If you told me differently for 7 and 8, that's what I would do, and I would have to rely, I believe, on Ross to, be the voice of the client here negotiating with Rich Air on the price.
Here's how it happens. Ross will do the research. You may be disappointed. There's other airports where they only pay 20 cents. So there may be others that pay a lot more, but it may be Westchester, maybe Peterborough down in New York. The last airport manager and Ross with these approvals, they pick an average of what the surrounding areas, Saratoga, Schenectady, Albany, Rutland, that's how they come up with these numbers. Now, if the new number's 31 or 32 cents, I'm fine with that. But honestly, I think there's a fair number now. But again, I'm always open.
Okay, that's acceptable to the committee?
Yes.
Craig, you have anything to chime in about? Okay.
We're already getting...
So we'll do a little bit of negotiating and come to a resolve. Okay, call the question. Yeah, he could say no. He doesn't like. Okay, call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. All right.
Okay, we received a request for providing temporary fuel services, temporary fuel capabilities during the construction of the new airport aviation fuel farm out at the airport. So I have been in discussions with Buildings and Codes, I've been in discussions with our consultants and our engineers, and they've reached out to some professionals in the industry to try and get a handle on what would be required code-wise, compliance-wise, safety-wise, in order to provide temporary fueling. during the construction of the fuel farm. We're looking at how much contingency funding we have available within the grant. First step, and we still haven't gotten an answer yet from New York State DOT, is if any of these additional costs would be reimbursable under the grant, under the state grant for the fuel farm. If we move forward under the assumption that they are reimbursable, and there's nothing to lead me to believe that they won't come back with that determination. However, there is an estimated cost right now of $3,000 to have our consultants review the proposed plan for the temporary fueling and to make sure that we have a code compliance and provide documentation, third-party documentation to buildings and codes and the fire marshal to make sure that the system is up to snuff for temporary fueling to reduce and control the county and the FBO's liability in doing so. So right now we have that out there. To give you an update, I'm hoping to have an answer from the DOT on the reimbursable question of these costs under the grant, and as soon as I have that information, I will share it with the county leaders.
What about the logistics that was pointed out in a couple emails of facilitating the amount of fuel that's needed? Why this is going on for a 2-week period?
Yeah, we're hoping that the contractor has a 30-day window per the contract in order to provide, to get the construction done. And in discussions with the contractor, they believe that they can get the fuel farm from the time they decommission the old fuel farm to the time they commission the new fuel farm. They believe they can get that done in roughly 2 to 3 weeks. They think they can have that fuel farm back up and running. Most of the work is done off-site. They assemble all the skids, all the pumps off-site. The site work that's done in advance, the fuel farm can stay in service while they do some of that site work. They can plate over the open trenches so that access can be, maintained during that phase of the construction. So there was a construction phasing plan that was submitted that was always part of the plan. So even back when this project was initiated, it was always intended that there would be a brief shutdown of the fuel farm for construction. So now that we're getting into summer months, it's more crucial for the FBO to be able to provide those services. They've requested that we provide that service, that temporary fueling ability during construction. So we're analyzing all the information, we're pulling it all together, we're making sure that the county is protected, their liability issues are addressed, and I think that we'll be able to, I'm confident that we'll be able to come to a good solution for everybody. If the schedule needs to slide a little bit to make this happen, the schedule can slide a little bit.
Rich and Mr. Lapp, are you good with that?
Well, the concern is May 15th is the start date,
That is the proposed construction schedule, yep.
and today's May 1st. And
That's
again,
correct.
We're just being proactive on our end because we're in a peak season now and we're selling a lot of jet fuel. And it's not just private jets, it's emergency helicopters and planes that come in for emergency services.
Sure.
We don't have a plan right now. If we put one in place, we just need to know where to go because we can't have fuel. And again, in a perfect scenario, I don't know, if weather comes in 30 days, if they go over, we just need to know that we can bring in fuel. And we've already made a proposal to bring another 5,000 gallon jet truck in. We just want to know we're reimbursed for it. That's all we're asking for.
Okay, Kevin, you have a question?
Just curiosity, how long have we known this?
Pardon me?
How long have we known we're going to do this? Why are we having to wait on the state to tell us if it's reimbursable? How long have we
Because it
known?
was never included in the scope of work to provide temporary fueling services for this project.
How long have we known about the project?
2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But there is a provision in the lease that I sent around last week that said the county is responsible for providing a temporary during construction.
Okay, that's fine.
Right.
Just curious.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, Mark, you're up.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for being so patient. You've seen me working hard up here, though.
I know everybody wants to wrap this meeting up, but I've waited for an hour and a half to say something. I appreciate you having the patience to listen to me. I want to commend you and the county attorney on running an outstanding public hearing the other night. I would have liked some questions to have been answered, but you two were extremely professional and polite, and I commend you both. It was a very good session. I'm here today because of item number 6, committee to review questions posed at the April 5th public hearing for Runway 119 extension project and any answers available. The only thing I've heard is that there's a draft being worked on this weekend that's going to go to the FAA. Now, I'm not going to ask you to start addressing the questions in that meeting, but I would like you to please answer Supervisor Bramer's request that it would be nice to see those questions before or at the time that they go to the FAA. Can we see the questions before they go to the FAA? Or at the time they go to the FAA?
Can I address that, Mr. Chairman?
That'd be okay?
Prescott, one of the items, that item was one of the other ones that said I was to provide an overview, so I did speak to the Ms. McKee at CNS and get an understanding of the process from this point forward. CNS, Ms. McKee is summarizing the public comments that were made at the public hearing, both the verbal ones and the ones that were submitted in writing. She is generating proposed responses to those. She will then submit those to the FAA for review and approval of those responses. Based on FAA's feedback from those proposed responses, they will issue a draft report for the FAA. They will then submit that to the FAA, the FAA will make whatever determinations it wants on the need for an environmental impact statement or a finding of no significant impact. That will then result in their final report, which will be published for review. There'll be no further public comment. However, earlier in that process where I said we were going to submit that to the FAA, my understanding is that is public and it will be made available to the public.
All right, and that will be made available in what manner? It'll just be put up on the website, or will there be, how will we know when it's available? Brian?
I hadn't worked through those details
Okay.
yet, but I'll make sure that you're aware of it.
All right, thank you, sir. The other thing I'd like to commend the whole board on is you're holding another night meeting, and I really think that's great because people like myself take time out of their day. I've got 7 clients, and it's great to be able to go to a meeting at night. That's about all I was going to say, but I just feel compelled to weigh in on the discussion today. I really think that the whole discussion today underscores why the county needs to move to one resource at the airport, whether it's the FBO or the county-run facility, because, I mean, Mr. Reichenbach and Mr. Lapper had a conversation before this meeting, obviously, and seemed to work out a very amicable solution and recommendation. They were both on the same page. That's obviously not taking place between the FBO and the airport manager. And I'm absolutely shocked, this whole discussion about the restaurant. I mean, 3 years ago, I brought up that this was part of the contract, and for 3 years, the airport manager, the DPW superintendent, and this committee and board has observed what Mr. Skimmerhorn has been doing out there and has gone along with it. And now you bring up that there's no diner? I mean, give me a break. And then the gentleman is putting his own money into it, doing it openly and honestly, bringing in some new revenue, and there's an issue with this now? I mean, that's just amazing to me. I hope you make a decision soon, move forward with one resource, save the $500,000 or so that Mr. Skimmerhorn says he can save, and put it into something much more useful and productive. And that's all I had to say today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Mark. Rachel?
Mr. Ruscott brought up a couple issues from the airport advisory. Usually we have an update on the advisory committee, and there were just 2 points of clarification that I need for the committee, if that would be allowed. But I also had one other question for Ross, which I've asked our chairman and our county administrator about it, and I haven't heard an answer. What one would you like me to do first?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, let me just start with the one I'm not sure of. Last Thursday night, I got a call from 2 different residents that, and I'm sure this is wrong, and I just need it on the record clarified. Was there a limo on the runway in the evening?
We did a tour with a group of volunteer firefighters at the airport, and it was an aircraft rescue firefighter training class. There was about 20 to 30 firefighters that I gave a tour to, and they brought a bus, and I escorted them around the airport, yes. So it may have looked like a limousine, but yes, it was a group of firefighters
in a bus.
In a training class. that I was escorting and providing training to.
Okay. Can you just send me info on that training so I can respond?
Sure.
I appreciate the explanation. And then the second issue is just the airport advisory update. There were two things that have come to my attention over the last couple of weeks. I've spoken with our county attorney about it, as well as you, Chairman Gerard. And what I would like to have just put on the record so that I can convey it correctly on Thursday at the Airport Advisory Committee. And Brian, I'm going to paraphrase, and I'm hoping you're going to turn it into legal words. One is that the extension is not a topic for discussion at the Airport Advisory Group because the committee it was formed out of a facilities committee, and the board has already voted on that issue. Therefore, there's nothing to be reviewed by the Airport Advisory Group because the Board of Supervisors already voted. Am I correct? Because there's nothing pending in front of us.
That's my understanding as well. Yes, I agree with that characterization.
Okay, because I just want to be able to get back to them and say, I asked our county attorney and our county chair those questions, and this is the answer I'm getting. And number two, that for the purposes of the advisory group, while one of our main goals has been just to increase the professional communication between our staff and Rich Air, and we've come a long way, putting a lot in writing, and I'm sorry we didn't win on the vending machine, and we weren't able to do that for the pilots, but thank you, because it looks like we still have something, and it's a good compromise, and as one member said, they'd like to see something happen from our group. But the second is we've had a lot of discussions about the pending RFP and looking forward at that timeline. So it's my understanding that the advisory group will be tasked with looking at a draft RFP at the time after it's completed by the work group at the county. We'll then hit it over to the advisory group for technical advice and review as a subcommittee of this committee, if I'm saying it right.
No problem, yeah.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
With Rich's lease being done in a year and a half. So it was my understanding that process needed to start taking place now. But there were some concerns over some of the information that was being provided at the meetings, and we want to be very fair, obviously, to anybody, including Rich, including the county, including anybody else. So once there's a draft RFP done for that, then it will come back to the committee before it's being released.
May I address that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I think there are two concerns that I have. One is to make sure that to the extent that information that may or may not be in the RFP, that if it becomes public, that we make sure that all interested parties who may or may not want to enter a proposal responsive to that have the same level of access to that information. I think whether we allow some of it or not any of it out is a business decision we can make, but the overriding concern is that everyone has equal access to that and they're playing on the same field. And the other part of it is the business decision part, which is at some point we have to make that decision how much information is going to be allowed to be public, because it will affect our end of the negotiations ultimately that might result in a deal from that process.
Yeah.
And that, again, I know you're aware of it, but I want to remind the rest of the committee and the people in attendance here is that the advisory group can't vote on things. It can only give advice to this committee, who can take whatever action it wants to take.
I appreciate that. I hope you'll be there Thursday to explain that a little bit for me. But that was the whole reason we had our county attorney involved in the group, to be able to let us know, where we're at with things. Certainly I don't have that legal background. So I think that it is functioning. We had to cancel last month, but I do think that we've been able, as you've seen, there's been some referrals back and forth, and I think that if we operate within that manner, recognizing that we're a group of community members, pilots, across the board, different representations that could look at things if asked by the facilities committee and vice versa, I think it would be a very functional body.
Okay. In the interest of time, does anyone else have anything else to come before the board? Or this committee, excuse me. Okay. How about, we good with everything here? Anyone else have any members of the public? Okay, motion to adjourn by Matt, seconded by Ron. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nobody opposed.
I'm going to have a quorum for